Part 48. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Bulletin Lau Bulletin Si Bulletin Me. Chapter 471. 4 elite troops, Bloody Cross, Dark Light, Shadow Warrior, and Ursuline Hand, with a total of 3,000 troops, held out in a small camp built in the jungle. There were not many players online, and the 3 presidents chose the right time. In the face of the overwhelming offensive of the indigenous warriors, the newly developed camp was on the verge of destruction. However, they had to pretend to hold out in order to buy time for Ono's camp. The players in the other hemisphere who were still online took on the responsibility of communication. The NPCs in charge of each elite had little impact. The shield in front and the long range in the back did not have any new tactics. Like an ark submerged in the vast ocean, the third camp was fighting to the death. This time, the 3 major guilds mobilized a stronger army, so under the protection of several witch doctors over level 100, the soldiers were eager to fight, without any fear, and wanted to make their own contributions to their homeland. For every soldier of the Sunset Cult who fell on the battlefield, at least more than 20 indigenous warriors fell. Except for those who were well equipped and of higher ranks, almost no one could hold out for more than 10 seconds in front of the defensive army. The area was soon filled with corpses, and even the entrance was blocked. The 3 presidents breathed a sigh of relief. They at least knew that this time, the enemy would either be forced to retreat outside the forest or choose to die with them. According to estimates, it would take at most 100,000 casualties to eliminate all the enemies. This was enough if the enemy was willing to fight them to the death. The battle lasted for more than an hour. At 5 o'clock in the morning, Shen Xian still did not wake up. He did not like to be disturbed when he was sleeping, so he would not answer any emergency communication from anyone. Similarly, Miss Yao was snoring and had no idea that her territory was attacked. Of course, there were also the vast majority of Asians who had no chance to see the scene of the weak fighting the strong. On the other side, Ono's camp, at this time, it was afternoon on the other side of the world. Ono and some players had already understood where they were accused, and built this camp only 90 kilometers away from the kingdom of Uluru, with the purpose of waiting for the enemy's main force to leave, so that they could take advantage of the opportunity to enter and seize the city. As long as they seize the city, like the last war, they can first achieve faster development and master rich material reserves, and secondly, have stronger defense. Relying on the city walls and arrow towers, they will be able to keep out enemies that are several times their number. The situation this time is a little special. Ono received the news that the 3 major guilds attacked the camp, and came out to explain to several players under his jurisdiction. The 3 major guilds did not send out all their forces. In several nearby cities, there are still hundreds of thousands of relatively weak troops. Our goal is to take the opportunity to control a city, so we must be mentally prepared. The resistance on the other side will be stronger than we imagined. Ono controls 80,000 fallen demons. When necessary, they can go out in full force and leave an empty camp. So far, only 2 batches of reinforcements have arrived, and the 3rd batch will arrive after they conquer the city. The movement speed of the fallen demons is a bit slow. With the advantage of surprise attack, the 3 major guilds will not react so quickly, so they will definitely win. At 6:30 in the morning, the indigenous city of Drake, a city with a population of 80,000, is on the border of Uluru and is one of Uluru's strongholds against external invaders. At this time, there are less than 20,000 indigenous soldiers in Drake. In the game, it is late at night, and most of them are drowsy. Ono boldly mobilized all the demons and players in the 2nd camp, divided them into several groups, and began to attack Drake. They knew that as long as they could complete their mission, the balance of war would continue to tilt towards them. They only had one chance. Drake's city wall was not high, about 5 meters high and 2 meters wide. Hundreds of soldiers were patrolling. When a large number of fallen demons blocked the city gate, These sentinels immediately issued a warning, and some even jumped down directly, ready to wake up the large troops in the city and let them cooperate in defense. Unfortunately, the city wall could not stop the jumping of the fallen demons. Most of the fallen demons could run to the city wall by jumping up. For them, the city wall did not exist. The fight began. Before the army was ready, the first line of defense of the city was occupied. Thousands of demons poured into the city. Some people wanted to resist, but there were so many fallen demons that before one was eliminated, 3 or 4 of them immediately pounced on them and eliminated the resistance. The army was divided into 2 groups, one was responsible for the massacre, and the other went straight to the city center, led by Ono, and began the sacrifice ceremony in the city. The open-air square that was once used by witch doctors to release skills was occupied by a large group of fallen demons that suddenly appeared in the other plane. Together with the army waiting outside, after the sacrifice, there were a total of 100,000 demons in Drake City. Ono quickly began to take over, first slaughtering the rebellious residents and leaving a few obedient ones. The locals were familiar with where there were wood, stones, and food, and there was no point in killing them all. In the end, the residents in the city were lucky to keep their lives, but the price was that they would become slaves without freedom, driven by the devils, and used as tools for construction and development. At 8 o'clock in the morning, the situation became stable. In a country where players exist everywhere, the news cannot be concealed for long. When both sides of the fight suffered a large proportion of casualties at the same time, the news finally came out. The 3 guilds were surprised. They were watching the enemy's every move and the exchanges with the Mu Kingdom, but they never thought that a devil camp was quietly operating before the first war, and it was still behind them without revealing its true colors. The first city in the kingdom was completely occupied. The 3 presidents could still remain calm, but their soldiers could not. Should they continue to fight or withdraw to support? If they continued to fight, they could not guarantee that they would completely eliminate the enemy. As planned, they just wanted to strike the enemy's living forces through fighting, forcing them to abandon the second camp and have to flee to a farther place. Now they have achieved their goal. They paid tens of thousands of casualties, razed the enemy's camp to the ground, and also eliminated more than 100 level 90 elites. However, the plan was aborted just because of the third camp that appeared out of thin air. The purpose of driving away could not be achieved, and the plan would lose its meaning. The 3 presidents were glad that there were many troops left on the border. While ordering the players to return to defense quickly, they thought about what they should do. They were not worried about the kingdom, which had the guardian of Uluru. It was not enough to rely on nearly 100,000 demons to conquer Drake. However, the players who heard the news were dejected. They were used to challenging the strong and creating miracles. It was hard for them to believe that they, who called themselves elites, high-level players and hardcore players, would suffer a Waterloo. Moreover, after a major mistake in obtaining intelligence this time, it was difficult to improve. Don't think that a group of natives are easy to train. It is no less difficult to teach them to become qualified scouts than to teach barbarians to use dwarf artillery. I don't know how the Tumen Kingdom will react. There are not many players in the Tumen Kingdom who are in high positions. Therefore, the short-sighted rulers will at most ruthlessly reject their requests and secretly laugh at their incompetence, not realizing that there will be no eggs under the overturned nest. The army hurried back along the road they came from. It took more than 10 hours to get here, and it took the same amount of time to go back. The movement speed in the jungle was very slow. At 8:30, Shen Xian finally came online. He looked at the slightly dilapidated third camp, busy rebuilding and replenishing the blood of the units, and then contacted Ono and learned that the second camp had won. He knew that the plan was successful. The next step is to recover quickly. The opponent's purposeful attack caused the Light of Darkness, Shadow Warriors, and Hand of Ursuline to lose a lot of people in several NPC legions. These people were cultivated for several months before they were born. There is no possibility of resurrection. He must use them sparingly. After burying the dead on the spot, even the ceremony was omitted, because the doctrine of the sunset god cult stipulates that believers are indifferent to life and death, and only such a doctrine can create a fanatical and fearless legion. Unfortunately, these players forgot an important thing and made a mistake: they didn't lead the army to pursue. There is no way, half of the players in the camp are not online, so naturally they can't organize manpower. As the attacking party, they must always suppress the enemy to suffocate in order to take the initiative, but unfortunately most players will ignore this point in battle. It's not too late. Shen Xian led a group of shadow warriors with the fastest speed to pursue. The time when Uluru was destroyed and people died was approaching. The soldiers had no time to care about the flies behind them. Under the leadership of the god, the pursuit was effective. Shen Xian alone killed thousands of people with a level of more than 100. The number of enemies eliminated in the whole process was as high as 10,000, which made the retreating team chaotic and on the verge of collapse. In the morning, their attack continued to win the good news. Tens of thousands of indigenous soldiers fell in the jungle. In the distant Drake, they even repelled a group of troops who acted without authorization and led the army from nearby cities. The results of the battle in one morning far exceeded the sum of the past week. It must be said that the carefully arranged strategy has finally come to fruition. After the counter-attack of Dusk City, Uluru will increase its army at a realistic rate of thousands per day after a short rest. Their enemies will be forced to shrink their defenses towards the center of the kingdom little by little. Now it is time to study how to deal with the two guardian gods in Uluru. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Buledin Lau Buledin Si Buledin Me. Chapter 472. The kingdom of Uluru was immersed in a sad atmosphere. Everyone felt that the end of the world was coming. Their invincible army was defeated again and again in front of the enemy, so that they no longer had the idea of fighting the enemy. Confidence had long been lost. Facing the terrible enemy, they could only tremble. At the time when the presidents of the three major guilds were holding an emergency secret meeting and the population migration in the area around Uluru was in progress, several figures sneaked into the depths of the kingdom of Uluru in the dark night. They arrived at the sacred and inviolable capital. Stone totems could be seen standing tall on both sides of the street more than 10 meters apart. The totem was a beast similar to an orangutan. It was rumored that the ancestor of Uluru was raised by a gorilla, so there was such a country. The layout of the capital was just like a primitive city, chaotic and without obvious functional areas. Instead, the large platform used for sacrifices was famous. It looked like a spire building, built of rocks, about 50 meters high. Torches were lit around the platform day and night, and there were elite warriors and witch doctors in the kingdom guarding to ensure safety. After several days of investigation, the identities of the two guardians of the kingdom were revealed to Shen Xian. One was the god of strength, a human transformed gorilla several tens of meters tall, said to be Kazi, the former king of Uluru. The other was the god of wisdom, a human transformed python, whose identity should be Alu, the queen of Kazi. In the closed world, an independent belief system was formed. However, the two guardians who did not know how to communicate with the outside world spent most of their time in the depths of the royal capital. This time, the god of wisdom had to leave her lair only because of the tense war on the front line. There was only one god of strength left in the royal capital. The devout guards dragged several huge corpses of monsters and placed them in the center of the large platform. The witch doctors below formed a circle around them. In the darkness, only this place in the royal capital was as bright as day. If they wanted to sneak attack, it would not be successful. If they could not sneak attack, they would force it. They knew the strength comparison and only needed to eliminate one guardian, and they would be one step closer to victory. The sacrificial rituals of the indigenous people are somewhat similar to the blood sacrifices of the devil, but without the blood of the devil. Usually, livestock and wild beasts are used as sacrifices. Unless they need to go to war or win, they will use war slaves as sacrifices in exchange for the support of the patron god. A flickering flame seemed to jump onto the corpse of the monster. In the darkness, a huge shadow appeared in front of everyone. The 151 level Kaz was indeed weird and looked no different from an orangutan. At the stage of gods, the detection of the mage and the true knowledge of the priest were useless. The only way to judge the attributes of the enemy was through a loophole reserved for players by the kingdom. The damage value is used to judge the attack power, and the blood bar is used to judge the life. This requires a certain amount of calculation. In the tense battle, there is not much chance. At this time, the ceremony was at its climax. Suddenly, several figures jumped onto the big platform. Except for Shenxian, the remaining players turned to the witch doctors and guards below. They are the future of the kingdom. They are either high-level NPCs of more than 100 levels or young units of heroic level. In short, it is good to kill them. The players caught them and started to kill them. Most of the players who came over were above level 120, and there were nearly 10 of them. But no matter whether it was the guards or the witch doctors, none of them wanted to leave. They stared at the battle between the phantom and the invaders on the big platform with fiery eyes, firmly believing that their patron saint could drive out the invaders for them. The battle on the big platform was extremely fierce. It was a duel with the gods, or it could be said that it was for the gods who were not gods. They did not understand the laws of the kingdom of God, did not build their own world, and forcibly used divine power to stay in the material world. They would be bound by the laws of the other plane and could not affect their enemies. It must be said that the god in front of them was probably the weakest god in the world, but the weakest god still could not tolerate the invasion of mortals. The divine power was like a prison. The huge fist swung by Kaz instantly punched a hole in the large platform dozens of meters high. The building made of the hardest rock had a life value of more than 100,000, and was killed in one blow. The god of strength really lived up to his name. He jumped up and started to attack. He didn't have the dazzling magic of the mage. He relied on his own physical damage and a large number of summons. After more than 10 seconds, Kaz's basic attributes were judged, which were about 15 million health points, 350,000 attack power and 90,000 defense power. The following battle progressed rapidly. It was relatively easy for a level 120 player to kill a level 100 NPC. The most important thing was that the level 100 elite and hero level had several times the difference in health points, attack power, and defense power. Most of the level 100 in front of him were elites, so it was not difficult. A river of blood flowed, and in the ruins of the large platform, Kaz's attack was terrifying and violent. Every time he swung, the surrounding air seemed to rise and burn. A burst of explosion-like sound accompanied by a raging wind swept across hundreds of meters. Whether it was friendly or enemy forces, they were either repelled, slowed down, or stunned. Shenxian's output per second was about 18,000. It would take about half an hour of stable output to overthrow the god of strength. It would be too late to wait for the army inside the capital to arrive. Even the 3 presidents who were meeting in the capital could not stop him. Kaz immediately recognized the culprit who invaded Uluru. As a god, he vaguely knew a little about the devil's tricks, but because it was circulated in the story and was not clear, they fell into such a passive situation. The two sides fought head-on. As an excellent warrior, even Shenxian, who had the highest attack power, could not cause him fatal damage. The health of both sides was rapidly decreasing, but the flexible Shenxian could always dodge Kaz's skill attacks and not suffer too much damage. After a quarter of an hour, Kaz's health was reduced to 50%. Another black figure appeared on the large platform. It was another Kaz. This was Kaz's real body. He usually hid in the void to prevent being completely eliminated. This time he was desperate and had to use his trump card to fight to the death. Two giants like gods besieged Shen Xian and attacked him to the point of being impenetrable. There was no chance to dodge. However, with the changes in the surrounding terrain, his passive skills summoned a lot of level 50 demons. In the Crimson area, the strength of the demon summoned by the dead unit is determined by the level. The higher the level, the stronger the demon. After killing a group of level 100 guards around, the platform was immediately occupied by hundreds of level 50 and 60 demons. With the devils restrained, the players pulled away one after another, got rid of the NPC's entanglement, and set their sights on the focus of the action, Kaz. Kaz's health recovery speed is very fast, and his fur has a damage reduction effect. It is not feasible to rely on low-level attacks, but with high-level players, the attack output has doubled or tripled, and the situation gradually turns to their side. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Buledin Lao Buledin Si Buledin Me. Chapter 473. Near the big platform, the battlefield was in chaos. It felt like it had just experienced a dust storm. There were no intact buildings, and only scattered corpses were seen. Never thought that Kaz might surrender. The players took full output. Under the attack of 4 or 5 players, although their personal attack output was less than half of Shen Xian, it was still a heavy burden for Kaz. He was not omnipotent. With the help of the ignorant beliefs of the indigenous people, he was actually a semi-finished existence. He was beaten like this and had no chance to escape. Kaz could be said to be extremely unlucky. In addition, he himself was addicted to fighting and had no control skills. Ordinary attacks could knock off 1/7 of the player's health, and skill attacks could knock off 1/3, but it still could not stop the player's free running. His health gradually decreased to a dangerous level, and his real body was stared at by the players to prevent him from escaping. A few kilometers away, the fierce battle could be clearly witnessed in the palace of the king's capital. Although the 3 presidents were anxious, they did not dare to show up. If the army in the king's capital was also lost in this battle, they really had no chance of winning. They hoped that the God of Wisdom and the army in the border area could successfully extinguish the city occupied by the enemy, at any cost. In the distant Drake, a difficult offensive and defensive battle was taking place at the same time. Because of the existence of God, the city that should have been impregnable became extremely fragile. Whether it was the city walls or arrow towers, whether it was traps or moats, in front of God, they could only be destroyed. If they could extinguish the stronghold of the sunset god cult in Uluru, they would gain a greater advantage. A few minutes later, the first incarnation was destroyed, and only Kaz was left with his true body. He began to roar at the jungle not far away. A typhoon-like sound wave swept through the deep forest of dense plants, and the beast soon responded from inside. The player looked back and saw hundreds of forest wolves rushing out of the woods and rushing towards them. In addition to the wolves, there were also giant claw bears, grey crows, and 2-legged dragons, a series of powerful creatures in the forest. Led by several heroic beasts, the outer demon formation was immediately broken, and the beasts rushed into the center of the large platform to assist Kaz in the battle. Thousands of beasts. Kaz must have spent a lot of effort to train such an army in the forest of the royal capital. A player who did not react in time was immediately killed by his 2 attacks. Unfortunately, NPCs did not understand that players can be reborn after death, so there is no difference between NPCs and players in the targets of attack. The player who just died was a lord in Dusk City, but just before the action, Shen Xian used a small trick to recover some losses. Players will lose levels when they die, and the death of lords will also reduce the satisfaction of the territory by at least 10 points, and civilization, prosperity, and miracles by at least 5 points, so if they die in the battle to encircle and suppress the gods, the loss will be too great. However, if the position is relieved first, the loss can be avoided. If the position is relieved, the loss will be only 1/3. Because some players were killed, the remaining players were hesitant. While they were dodging, they were worried whether Kaz would have other tricks that he had not used. With the help of the beasts, the platform was surrounded. If one incarnation was destroyed, Kaz would probably be no different from a demigod in the next few weeks. He wondered if he could retreat in time, but Shen Xian still had no intention of giving up. His attack and movement were so seamless. Most importantly, the level difference between him and Kaz was not big, so he had only suffered a little damage so far. He stopped moving. After thinking for a while, he showed a sense of confidence in his mouth. He sent several orders to different players around him. As they wished, the players attacked the beasts that surrounded them and were ready to break through at any time. As a result, there were only 2 or 3 players left around Kaz, and they were still struggling to support his stormy attack. Kaz seized the opportunity to kill another player. If it weren't for Shen Xian, he was confident that he could completely eliminate this group of level 120 enemies, but because there was a person who was not a god but had god-level attributes, he could only passively take the beating. Another player died, and the originally anxious players were a little panicked. Kaz's real body still had 64% of its health left. After the fight, he had to escape. Who could guarantee that there would be no army sent out from the capital? However, something unexpected happened. After killing 2 players, Kaz actually twisted his butt and ran away. He grabbed the air with his claws, and a black hole shaped like a space door appeared. Then he jumped in, and his whole body seemed to be swallowed up and disappeared quickly. What surprised them even more was that the Lord followed him without thinking. What should he do if there was a sea of fire and swords inside? When they were questioning, each living player received a private chat message, ordering them to follow in, and he would be responsible for the losses. Hearing this order, most players were reluctant, but in order to obey the order, they still walked in one by one. On the contrary, the guy who walked the slowest, because the space gate disappeared quickly and only existed for a few seconds, was unable to wait until he entered, and half of his body was exposed outside, and he was directly crushed by the collapsed space crack, and his health dropped from 90% to 20%. What he saw before him was Kaz's kingdom of God, grey and hazy like the chaos and nothingness when the world was first created. He did not know how to create, but simply turned it into a special space to hide himself, and there was no existence in it. There was no light, no earth, water, fire, wind, and no life, so it could not be called a kingdom of God. A few simple rules maintain constraints similar to those of the alternate plane, stabilize the spatial structure, prevent the Big Bang from happening, and keep their levels unaffected, except for weightlessness. Players must move as if they were traveling in space, and the biggest impact is that it is much more difficult to dodge attacks. Seeing a group of players following in, Kaz immediately released a skill in anger. He swung his fist fiercely, and it was as if a bomb had exploded in the space, and the shock wave swept everywhere. In just a few seconds, a 6-digit damage number appeared above the players' heads. It must be a quick battle. Then, Kaz hurriedly opened another space door, connecting to the place just now. Groups of beasts obeyed his call and entered his space. The situation became the same as before, except that it was a completely closed battlefield. There was no chance to escape. Unless there was a way to open the space door in a short time or a rare teleportation scroll was prepared. Shen Xian rushed up directly. He was very familiar with this kind of battle. The remaining players knew that they had no choice but to follow closely, and the two sides started fighting again. I will keep updating at this speed in the next few days. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Buletin Lao Buletin Si Buletin Me. Chapter 474. In the void without any sound, Kaz just used his most primitive power to make his own brutal attack on the surrounding space. Although the damage of hundreds of thousands each time was terrible, it followed the law of decreasing as the distance was reduced. After mastering the method of walking in the void, the chance of dodging was greatly increased. Hundreds of beasts, if they had human wisdom, perhaps the player would not be able to leave here today, but beasts are not human, and they are difficult to defeat in their own habitats, but it becomes difficult to move in the void. Most of the time, the beasts had to revolve around their own bodies, not to mention that Kaz's attack ignored friendly and enemy forces. After a while, the astonishing number of beasts turned into corpses floating in the air. Kaz regretted that he chose to escape at the beginning, but he had no chance to save himself. But it is also true that they have tens of millions of believers and more than 1 million religious troops in various worlds. How could they lose their troops in front of a country? In the final analysis, they are not on the same level, and resistance is futile. Of course, Kaz didn't know this, and only knew how to resist desperately. Seeing that his health was running low, his attack speed became faster and more fierce. Entering the violent state, the attack speed increased by 100%, and the attack power increased by 50%. The approximate numbers were like this. Another level 120 player was killed with a gorgeous damage number of 554,000. To be able to become a level 120 player among billions of players, everyone present is definitely not a rookie, but even among the highest level players, there are differences in strength, and they may make small mistakes. Either it was an emergency, such as diarrhea, staying up late, and the result was that they couldn't concentrate. In short, when Kaz exploded, several players accidentally died in a short few minutes. Shen Xian still maintained a rhythmic attack speed, and his health was only a few 100,000. Wearing heavy armor and natural thick blood made him more durable than ordinary players, so he almost became the only attack output. The space vibrated more violently, and even the scenery in the field of vision began to distort. The enemy was clearly attacked, but the result was shown as a miss. The terrifying attack exceeded the scope that the laws of the entire world could restrain. No one cared about the beast's attack. The 120 level beast only caused tens of thousands of damage to them. Now it depends on who can destroy the opponent first. The players also began to fight desperately. They knew the best time to use the scroll props. Most of them were at the moment of victory, and they would decide the outcome with one blow, leaving no chance for the enemy to reverse. The true body of the god could never be resurrected, so naturally this was the last moment. Boom! 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 There were several big explosions in the space, and meteors as big as the temple, like burning stars, broke through the barriers of space and invaded one after another. He passed through the shackles, fell from the sky, and bombarded Kaz's body. The attack damage of 30,000 and 40,000 continued for more than 10 times. A level 10 magic scroll costs more than 100,000 yuan in cash on the market. It usually takes more than 1 month to make one with the materials obtained in the game. He also needs to become a third-level magician. In a short moment, 3 or 4 such level 10 magic scrolls were used. This time Shen Xian did not grab the experience. The 30% experience of the last attack is about 5 million, and he, who accounts for 24% of the total attack output, got more than 3 million experience for this. Kaz's body slowly disappeared and quickly decomposed under the howling storm of the void. The restless air around him calmed down and soon became more dead and silent like the polar regions. "Let's loot the spoils," Shen Xian said to the players below. Kaz did not seem to drop weapons and equipment, but there were several pieces of epic and legendary materials at once. Players are happy to clean up the battlefield. In addition to the drops from Kaz, there are also drops from the surrounding beasts. Those who are proficient in collecting can get a series of good things such as rare fur, bones, and beast meat, and some can even permanently improve attributes. Then leave. A closed space needs to open a space door, either by a mage or Shen Xian himself. Shen Xian obviously didn't consume much energy, so he volunteered and spent half an hour to find the space coordinates to Dusk City. He opened the portal. Walking into it, a few steps away from the broken world left by Kaz, like a pearl, looking up, the battlefield just now presented a crystal bright and strange visual effect. An idea came into his mind, and he had to take it back to study it. Shen Xian stretched out his hand, and slowly, the broken world seemed to obey his will, gradually shrinking, turning into a crystal ball, and appeared in his palm. This is Kaz's relic, maybe it can help him master more advanced space laws. This group of players went to the temple for treatment immediately after arriving at Dusk City. It would take several hours for a level 120 player in the kingdom to recover from low health to full health. Therefore, without the help of a priest, they could only wander around the streets, which was extremely boring. Drake from another dimension. The god of wisdom, Arrow, felt the death of her husband, and her heart was filled with grief. She turned into a flame of anger and launched a crazy attack. She turned into a 100-meter-long python and swung her body, instantly flattening a section of the city wall that was dozens of meters long. Then, thousands of indigenous warriors rushed into the city, preparing for a new round of battle. What fell into their eyes was a dead city that was completely desecrated by the devil. There was not a single living person. The people infected by the breath of hell lost consciousness like puppets, passively listening to the orders of the big devil, just when the natives rushed over. The big devil, who regarded human life as nothing, immediately drove the aborigines in the city to use them as the first batch of cannon fodder. It was so despicable that every warrior clenched his fists and had tears in his eyes. However, the devil who heard this praise would only be more happy and happy to admire the twisted and angry face of his opponent. Then, he would be counted as cannon fodder. The appearance time of Wan's various lower-class devils and the races that believe in devils. The resistance was too fierce, and even a well-prepared war plan could still go wrong. Wave after wave of attacks by indigenous warriors were repelled, and the number of corpses on both sides on the ground increased to tens of thousands. At the moment, 4 elites plus an army of more than 100,000 devils are all among Drake. The gods of wisdom, Arrow, and Kaz, are not strong or weak. Although they are called wisdom, they only master some witchcraft. Summoning natural disasters from heaven and earth, but does not have the ability to strategize and use troops like a god as imagined. Therefore, the battle for Drake was difficult, and the result was that it could not be conquered for a long time. Players with foresight can see that the kingdom of Uluru is declining. This will be their last powerful counterattack. Next, they will shift from defense to a full-scale offensive stage. The army of hell will spread across the land and conquer everything. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Buledin Lau Buledin Si Buledin Me. Chapter 475. Drake's war was in a state of stalemate, and the few remaining spare troops in the kingdom of Uluru needed to beware of their neighbor, the covetous Tumen. Therefore, what would happen in the future was still anyone's guess. A few hours later, Shen Xian, who had recovered from Dusk City, led a group of reborn players to the battlefield. These players, who had experience in killing gods, were excited to destroy the god of wisdom Uluru. The reason was that after the first player participated in the battle of killing gods, in addition to being able to obtain system broadcasts, they could also get an additional 15,000 reputation and an average of 2.5 billion experience. It was not certain whether the second time would still have such benefits, but judging from past experience, there were. At least, the level loss did not seem to be so great, so the desire to challenge overcame the idea of timidity. Besides, once the kingdom of Uluru was captured, they would get countless precious materials, which would make thousands of blacksmiths and alchemy workshops in Dusk City work non-stop and produce dozens of epic equipment for players' armaments. As heroes of the war, they should be rewarded. In this regard, Dusk City did a pretty good job. It did not create a warlord that was too powerful and uncontrollable, but allowed most players to wear priceless equipment. With the support of a group of high-level players, Drake's offense and defense were no longer restricted by high-level units. The offensive force was weakened again and again, and the fighting in the city was retreated to the vicinity of the city wall. An hour later, the spectacular scene of hundreds of thousands of people attacking the city was hard to see. The god of wisdom, Aluo, was chased and attacked by several players, and it was estimated that there was not much life left. However, unlike her husband, the python they faced was only one of the 3 incarnations, and the remaining 2 were black crows and mountain cats. And Aluo's true body was estimated to have no chance to appear again after the attack. Even if the country was destroyed, just in case, in order to leave the fire, fighting the enemy was the least worthwhile choice. Drake won a great victory. The 4th batch of fallen demons finally appeared in the army with the help of the sacrifice ceremony, just to make up for the losses of the war. After a few days of respite, the Sunset Cult began the cleanup operation. Our army will grow exponentially in a few days, and the target will be the neighboring cities marked on the map. Are we too eager for quick success? If we don't do enough solid work, Drake will be empty inside, and the stronghold we finally conquered will change hands again. The person who presided over the meeting was not Shen Xian, who was fighting in the other plane, but Miss Xiao. Although beautiful women are pleasing to the eyes, most men don't like to be ridden on by women, and their attitude towards Miss Xiao is always full of desire. Of course, if you want to learn to survive in this society, such training can be said to be a must. Looking at the group of elites below, their eyes, behavior, and their hearts are not uncomfortable at all. If you want to subdue them, you must first show real strength. Miss Xiao has the support of the Lock Consortium, which is the second treasury of Twilight City. If necessary, it is not impossible to directly allocate tens of millions of dollars in reality for the transmission fee of the Faith War. Anyway, in the past 2 years, Twilight City has earned a lot of money from players. It's just that for special reasons that only a few people can understand, there are no 2 lords, 1 male and 1 female, who have not carried out the so-called property division. This is the strength behind her. Except for the old people in Twilight City, the agents of several companies, and the Kangdu studio on the 2nd underground floor, not many people know about it. And Miss Xiao is eager to capture the next plane, but she doesn't care whether the players play or not. A businessman who truly puts profit first will never treat players as God. Even if the players don't play, the profit is still there, the purpose is still there, and there is no mercy. The debate between the Confucian scholars did not last long. The desire for destruction in the hearts of players is always greater than the desire for creation. Therefore, those bloody and violent games that can break a person's body into more than 20 parts in the past are always sought after by die-hard players. The purpose is determined, continue to attack, and don't do anything to waste time. In the temple, like a new life, the deep hollow becomes more and more vast, as deep and attractive as the vast stars. Chris stared at this thriving plane for a long time, and said in admiration, "It seems that there will be a place for you in the seat of the gods soon, boss." Not used to lying, Chris's words are naturally true, a devil becomes a god. To be precise, it is more appropriate to disguise as a god. Shen Xian's incarnation has all the factors that a god has: believers, priesthood, godhood, etc. This is certainly not to develop Loki among the gods, but just to leave a backdoor for invading the world of gods. Even Ilkan Bella showed a rare look of surprise, and looked at everything with playfulness. Perfect to the extreme, the naked body of a man who can drive any woman crazy, except for the face, the incarnation still vaguely looks like Shen Xian, showing a treacherous smile that only devils have. A god and a devil were watching his latest progress. They seemed to have communicated with each other and knew each other's positions. There would be no conflict. In the Doomsday War, many gods were lured by the devil and fell into hell. Shen Xian was able to complete his plan so quickly thanks to Chris's inadvertent actions. He wrote a book about his development results in the demi-plane in recent months, which is as valuable as a rare book written by a heroic NPC. As a result, the reader can improve some experience in the auxiliary skill of space studies and even improve the level. Shen Xian read this book and just met the upgrade conditions of space science level 13, so he successfully studied the secret of the space left by Kaz. As Chris said, from now on, there will be one more seat among the gods. An hour later, without receiving the world broadcast, an inconspicuous dim star appeared in the starry sky of the Night Star continent. It represented the position and existence of a god. It was dim because he was weak and gave people the feeling that it was so inconspicuous that the astrologers who discovered him would inadvertently ignore its existence. In addition to the few gods, the greatest existence in the world of gods, several main gods, including the two gods of the human pantheon, the main god of the elf pantheon, the main god of the dwarf pantheon, the gods of the orc pantheon, and many gods who like to be alone and have no connection with races, such as the god of death, the god of love, and even some ancient existences, have long been forgotten by people and completely integrated into the origin of the world. They do not need faith and no longer have emotions. Mechanical existence, such as the goddess of darkness and the god of time, have discovered changes. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Buledin Lao Buledin Si Buledin Me. Chapter 476. Drake's growth rate is beyond people's imagination. No territory can spread around at the speed of a virus. The war is about to start. In the jungle, a large area of scorched earth is vacant, turning into a paradise for demons. The endless demon army begins to conquer the surrounding cities. The cities of these indigenous people are like small boats floating in the ocean, which are in danger of being broken into pieces at any time. The three major guilds are taking it seriously. Although they say so, they have no confidence in facing strong enemies. Every advancement in the comprehensive strength rankings means that the forces in all aspects are much greater, and the top 20 are completely players composed of perverted state machines. On the morning of February 21st, Drake City developed, teleported, and summoned 210,000 demons, divided into 3 large legions, and attacked their enemies along the dense forest trail. The war ended a few hours later. Without strong reinforcements, Uluru, with a population of 6 million, seemed to have the strength of a medium-sized country, but it still could not compete with the giant Dusk City. At noon on February 23, the occupied area reached more than 200 territories, and the Devil Army, which had expanded to 300,000, continued to fight. The battle lasted for more than 10 hours, and directly took 1/6 of Uluru, a total of 623 territories. Next, they will encounter the Tumen Kingdom, which is worried about them. In Twilight City, players have been frantically carrying out a cash exchange activity in recent days. As the policy stated, as long as the trade volume of Twilight City can be increased, players can obtain various titles, limited rare equipment, 7 to 9 level scrolls and other benefits. In short, it is to use the player's money to exchange for the rapid growth of Twilight City's trade volume. The purpose of this activity is to make the prosperity of the 3 data meet the conditions and reach the limit of upgrading the 6th stage of territory. Players themselves have no capital. They need to obtain the only currency in the game, gold, through cash exchange, and then buy goods from afar and transport them to Twilight City for sale. This indirectly increases the trade volume of Twilight City. As a result, Twilight City pays for the equipment, positions, and other benefits of the virtual world, and players pay money and work, a happy result. Titles can increase the initial favorability of NPCs towards you, not to mention the role of rare equipment and advanced scrolls. The event attracted a large number of players to participate. After only a few days, the trade volume of Dusk City increased by 3 levels, and it was still positive, which means that Dusk City is making money, and satisfaction will increase when the system determines it. Along with the conditions for prosperity, the system received a reminder that the 6th stage of territory upgrade has begun. The thousands of large warehouses outside Dusk City have been filled up. Upgrading requires millions of resources. Because warehouses that affect satisfaction cannot be built in the city center, they will also occupy the location of shops. Resources have to be transported from a distance, which increases the cost a lot. The construction is progressing slowly. Manpower and material resources from all over the country are concentrated together. It can be completed in 360 hours, which is faster than some miracles. After completion, all building restrictions in the territory will be unlocked. There are a long list of basic buildings, as many as hundreds of them, and there are more buildings with different functions. In addition, the changes in architectural style and room types are enough to build a unique and magnificent city. The highest level of residential buildings is 5, upgraded to mansions, accommodating 30 units. The highest level of the mansion is 5. When it is upgraded to the palace, it will increase prosperity by 3, civilization by 3, miracles by 3, and unique constraints. The highest level of the road is 5, and the moving speed increases by 50%. In addition, some relatively basic buildings are basically set up with a 5-level upgrade system. Upgrading to the top level is very attractive in terms of gorgeousness and building scale, which can be seen from the colorful colors alone. This is the advantage of the human race. The elves, dwarves, and some rare races are different. The kingdom is like an encyclopedia of the customs of the fantasy world. Here you can find similar scenes that have appeared in any novel or game in the past. Some shops are mainly upgraded to a 3-level system. Although reaching level 3 will not make a shop as exaggerated and unrealistic as a department store, it will greatly improve the environment, which can enable the production players engaged in manufacturing in it to get the benefits of higher success rate and better quality. These benefits cannot be enjoyed in the 5th stage of the territory. They are special treatments given to the capital. Through the gradual upgrading from the 1st stage of the basic territory to the 6th stage of the territory, Dusk City ranked 3rd, and most of the rest were occupied, especially by the guild, which relied on the large number of people and was most convenient to occupy. As the 3rd upgrade, Shenxian will get 60,000 reputation and 5 million gold rewards. The money can be completely ignored. After all, a well-run territory cannot be short of money. When reaching the 6th stage of the territory, even the orcs who don't know how to make money can basically earn hundreds of millions of gold every month to maintain the normal operation of thousands of territories. Therefore, 5 million is really little. It's better to exchange it for cash. Of course, the exchange rate between cash and gold is not as high as in the past, and gold is not as valuable as in the past. 5 million can be exchanged for 2 million RMB, which is good. Because the upgrade cannot be interrupted, Shenxian started to complete the tasks of the 5 giants after presiding over the affairs of Dusk City. According to his understanding, the 5 giants have established an offensive and defensive alliance on the 1st floor of Hell, which can be said to be the overlord of one side. It is unclear what kind of emergency will occur in their mission. Before things stabilize, it is better to delay as much as possible. Now, the Battle of Uluru is more than halfway through, and 500,000 Devil Corps have been assembled. If there is any accident, Dusk City also has enough reaction time. The first step is reconnaissance. As early as a month ago, the players who went to the West Continent for reconnaissance brought map information, and Shenxian found the remaining Hell Gates based on the information. In the past history, there were a total of 18 Hell Gates in the world, several of which were destroyed in various wars, and only 13 were left. The 13 Hell Gates are the highest level Hell Gates, which require the 6th stage territory of the Devil Clan to build. The small Hell Gates cannot open a large enough space channel and cannot allow the huge Devil Lord to pass through. Only the largest Hell Gate, which is about 100 meters high, can withstand even the material body of the Ice Swamp Dog King. Thus, the 5 giants can come to the other plane. In terms of status, they are only slightly lower than Ilkambala, and are generals in the war. When invading the material world, the devils will not be dispatched and assigned by the 9 masters in person like in the bloody battle. The two are somewhat different. He spent some time to find the first and easiest one, summoned the devil to dig out the gate of hell, and repaired it. It was considered to have completed the task. The next thing will be handed over to his allies, not himself. They still have a vast eastern continent to occupy. And in reality, they encountered some urgent problems that needed to be solved for the final battle that was coming at any time. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Buledin Lao Buledin Si Buledin Me. Chapter 477. In a ward of a private hospital in Shanghai, several angels in white were serving the New York soldier on the bed with all their heart. As the security guards in the door, the New York soldier was injured and hospitalized again. From the moment this unexpected incident occurred, his dream of reaching level 130 has been temporarily put on hold. It seems that you are living a good life here. Shen Xian looked at the large number of charming nurses around him, and he couldn't help but feel a little envious. He said that except for some minor illnesses, he had never enjoyed such nursing care since he was a child. Yes, the New York soldier looked intoxicated. How do you say it? I think it's the blessing of all people. He said it very softly, for fear of being heard by others and damaging it. Lose his tall and complete image in her mind. Yan Yao on the other side pursed her lips, smiled softly, and said nothing. I'm afraid I won't be able to protect you in the next week, the New York soldier said. He is quite handsome, tall, and burly, which gives people a sense of security. Most little girls usually feel towards this kind of macho man generating interest. I believe this is the fundamental reason why the New York hunk is so popular in the ward. Besides, being able to live in one of the only hospitals in Shanghai that specifically caters to wealthy people, it is impossible for the nurses working here not to know that the patients they take care of are often celebrities and dignitaries of one party, so if you want to make money here, it can be said that it is the ideal of many nurses to become a diamond-level professional. Thanks to senior sister, I have this opportunity, otherwise you wouldn't be able to live in a hospital like this just based on your status. Shen Xian said something and glanced at Yan Yao gratefully. Yan Yao responded with a faint smile, this is such a small thing, but it's Shen Xian. I never thought you could take on that kind of position. The administrator system of the door is very strict. Perhaps in order to pay tribute to the forgotten binary system, such a unique and complicated hierarchical system is adopted. It is impossible to reach a high level without decades. Shen Xian was ordered to do so when he was in danger, and he got the special status of the second level. His performance over the past few years cannot be said to be precarious, but if he really wants to sit firmly, it is not enough without a few strong supporters. Christopher, who is almost the same generation as him, and the middle-aged Frostmourne, are among many players. Perhaps it was through their experience in the game, playing against them, and cooperating with them that they gained a certain degree of trust and were able to play the game. To this day, the past is like a dream. Shen Xian felt that the past 10 years were really like a dream and he would eventually return to reality. So he took a deep breath, nodded gently, and after taking care of the New York soldiers with Yan Yao, he drove to a house not far away. Private club. In a private room, nothing can be heard outside the room, so that the highest security can be ensured. This is usually the last stop for rich people to eat, drink and have fun, looking at the large bed and the pleasant music tinkling in the bathroom. Silky pink tones create a confusing atmosphere, all tempting people's desire to criminal. The senior sister and he just came here to talk about something. Yan Yao has a membership card here, and other places are not safe, so Shen Xian would not think that the senior sister wanted to do anything to him. The two walked into the room. Yan Yao sat down gently, put her hands on her legs, and asked, Shen Xian, tell me, what level of administrator are you in the door? If you can tell. The system stipulates that in non-safe places, one is not allowed to disclose one's identity to anyone, and internally, those with a level difference of more than 6 levels are not allowed to reveal one's identity to each other to avoid accidents. Shen Xian did not answer immediately, looked around and said jokingly, level 4, or level 3. As if she was not surprised and knew that she would not get a clear answer, Yan Yao was thoughtful. Sure enough, Professor Wang should be the missing first-level administrator. Yes, but this is in the past. The confidentiality system for the identities of the deceased is relatively public. On the one hand, it is to allow future generations to pay tribute and remember the unknown people who contributed to history. Yan Yao's inquiry is still confidential on the surface, but in a certain way, it is open to the public. After all, no one is a fool. How could he not guess it from all the clues? Professor Wang once worked in a university. He had a strange student, a guy who seemed to have entered the university through the back door. He was Shen Xian, the focus of Yan Yao's attention. At that time, Shen Xian was only 15 years old when he entered university, and he did not enter as a junior class. I'm afraid she is used to seeing top students, poor students, rich people, and poor people in school. Nothing makes her more curious than a new thing like Shen Xian. This is the nature of women. To put it mildly, it is gossip. I was an orphan. Professor Wang raised me. Although he was a first-level administrator, the only thing he taught me was how to play games. Everyone has their own strengths. At least in this field, you are indeed the strongest. Yan Yao comforted Shen Xian, who looked at him with a slightly nostalgic look on his face. Don't talk about this. Shen Xian suddenly waved his hand, not wanting to reveal any more secrets. A few years ago, in order to understand Heaven's information, senior sister, you entered the Rocks group and held an important position. Now, after a period of testing, senior sister, you have entered the senior management of Heaven. I think it is time for you to come back. Why? Is it just because you are worried about my safety? Yan Yao bit her lips and looked at Shen Xian with an extraordinarily charming look. Yes, because everyone knows the dangers of doing this, and no one objects. Besides, the core members of Heaven are all raised from babies, and they are definitely not something we can penetrate. Shen Xian seemed to be determined by Yan Yao. He used an extremely confident tone. Senior, you are about to become one of the 6th-level administrators. You should know your mission, not your wishes. As long as we can defeat them in the country, we will be able to win. There is no need for us to continue to obtain information through spies. As predicted in the past, when 1/2 of the world's wealth is transformed into possessions in the virtual world, no one will. The rules of the game can then be changed through reality. The input of players and the funds of companies will be turned into chips and the spoils of the winner will be divided. If there is only one winner, he will become a god. It sounded a bit exaggerated, but it was actually a prediction from a YY novel written at the end of the first decade of the 21st century. Yan Yao asked tentatively, a financial crisis? No, it will end before then. No one wants this, no one wants the tragedy to happen again. There are thousands of roads leading to Rome, but there is only one Rome. Our starting point is the same, we are all realizing the dream of mankind. Dreams, as long as you know this, you must understand that Heaven is not as scary as you imagine. I see. Yan Yao sighed, I will play the game seriously and treat it as work. Shen Xian looked at his senior sister and her eyes, a pair of beautiful and shining eyes with long eyelashes, and said, I will only consider getting married after the war is over. As if a stone had been thrown into the dead pool, Yan Yao's brain stopped thinking and looked at the person in front of her with complicated emotions. She couldn't tell what it was like. She seemed a little uneasy, as if someone had discovered the secret in her heart, but also as if she had been told a white lie. In short, a touching blush appeared on her face and she stood up. Let us turn our perspective to the mysterious research institute beside the West Lake in Hangzhou. With a cramp in his hand, he returned to the research institute where he had been away for more than 10 years, and his heart was full of nostalgia. At the beginning, this brand new encryption system had his sweat. As one of dozens of researchers, today, still there are not many left in the world. The assassination incident 15 years ago was shamefully carried out and too many elites were killed or injured. So far, it is still a mystery why H launched the attack. However, it is not a simple matter to clean out so many members at the same time. Things have changed and people have changed. Despite this, he still holds a large amount of core data of encryption technology in his heart. It will not fall behind due to the increase in computing power. The technology itself is not based on the traditional increase in password digits but on other aspects, so the secret in his heart it is of great use and can help crack the remaining passwords in the next time, speeding up the process by at least twice. When the staff around him led him around the institute, his hands cramped and he was ready to go to work. For him, he loves games. Games are not his life. His life should belong to science. The air around is a bit cold. Is it because the air conditioner is turned on? With cramped hands, I noticed the special looks of several staff members, and felt doubtful and uneasy. Professor Mike, you can work here with peace of mind these days. We will take care of the affairs of the Mu Kingdom. Several staff members told him the meaning without expression, leaving him with a pale face, feeling as if he was being imprisoned. Caged bird. The closed door was closed, and his hands were cramped and he was a little hesitant. Could it be that someone saw the restlessness in his heart? As expected, I should just remain a player. Fortunately, he was timid and did not take the path he shouldn't have taken in the end. Although there was resentment in his heart, or he had been away from the door for too long, he had long ignored the existence of rules and regulations, thinking about things he shouldn't have thought about, and told others he was talking about something he shouldn't have said, but someone got ahead of him and restricted his freedom in such a kind way. Several researchers used some of the technical information he provided to continue research and crack the password, while Mike, or his hand cramps, either did his unfinished research with the help of others, or could only log in to the website of the world's largest memory company, play thousands of games created over 100 years from 1970 to the present. The plan is in full swing. Online game DungeonMaster. Author, Bulletin Lao Bulletin Si Bulletin Me. Chapter 478. On the map of Uluru, the devil is rapidly encroaching on their vast territory, like an unstoppable natural and man-made disaster, making the natives unable to see their future. So far, about 1 million civilians have been massacred. As if overnight, the situation has taken a sharp turn for the worse, and a large number of mages proficient in forbidden alchemy have poured into the blacksmith shop of Dusk City, from whose hands hundreds and thousands of rare equipment have been born, becoming the largest secret collection of Dusk City. And those made by masters, such as Miss Xiao and Miss Erlin, can reach epic or even legendary quality. After the equipment is armed to the players, 300,000 religious troops plus 10,000 elites will have the possibility of rivaling medium-sized countries. This is only on the surface. The allies of Dusk City are also submerged. They have more than 1 million troops, and the religious troops in various planes also exceed 1 million. This kind of alliance is not a naked interest relationship, but just a false appearance to hide the real power. Even if the strength seems to be more dispersed, once it is gathered, it will be a decisive force that can affect the pattern of the continent. Hell, the palace of the fallen wizard Shiloh. After receiving the soul center promised by the completion of the task, Shiloh said, "Lord, you are a smart man. Many lords will find you in the future and need your assistance. After Shiloh finished speaking, the Ice Swamp Dog King next to him gave him a task to assist the Ice and Snow Temple to open the gate of hell sealed in the other plane, and rewarded 20 billion experience points, a good height of the Ice Swamp Dog King. The Withered Elf King on the other side also gave him a task to hand over the artifact of the elves, the Wrath of the Sun, Nordashir, which has been passed down from generation to generation, to the Grand Pope of the Ruins God cult, and rewarded 20 billion experience points and 10,000 reputation. The last task is the Devouring Lord, who asked him to find the underground caveman tribe and convey his order to build the gate of hell to the cavemen, and rewarded 20 billion experience points and 10 random epic materials. It seems that all the famous people in hell have their own spokespersons in the lower world, or they can contact directly, or they need to show their existence through their own hands. In short, Shen Xian will be busy for a while. Intelligence shows that the dark forces in various places are reviving. Since the bloody battle was at a disadvantage, the demon lords chose to disappear, so the devil lords began to be active, ignoring the anger of the gods. Each world can vaguely perceive a trace of crisis, as if the era of chaos is about to come. Shen Xian has been looking for the last 3 soul centers, trying to use the divination technique that is carefully calculated and used sparingly to find the location of the soul center, but because of the interference of powerful forces, the place he found is always vague and cannot be determined. Someone is obstructing him. He has no way to deal with this. Even the Lord of Hell is not able to be omniscient and omnipotent. It is conceivable what he can do. Time is passing. A month has passed. Uluru's population of 6 million is only left with more than 2 million, and half of the country has been turned into scorched earth. At the same time, the Tumen kingdom is not doing well. Although they also have the existence of guardian gods, they are also unable to resist the threat of transcending the world's power. After completing the 6th stage territory upgrade in Dusk City, the population of his territory is close to 5 million, with an army of about 400,000. At present, Shen Xian is constructing his own kingdom of God, thus completing a special stage, the growth from the 6th stage to the 7th stage. There is no necessary relationship between the 7th stage and the 6th stage. Even if you are an adventurer, as long as you become a god, you will have a 7th stage territory. The size of the territory may be only the size of a back garden, or it may be equivalent to a country, depending on the specific situation. At the same time, the merger action on the mainland continues. Players climb higher and higher, so they control the life and death of more small players. Unless they rely on big forces, small players have no living space at all. Whether it is a studio, a guild, or others, even in reality, they are affected and face the fate of reshuffle or separation. In such a situation, the hidden meaning is no longer significant. In early April, a major event was that the 2 major behind-the-scenes player forces in the game formed alliances, called H Alliance and D Alliance respectively. H Alliance includes most of the forces that Heaven has cultivated since 2 years ago, including 32 of the top 100 in the comprehensive rankings, with a total population of nearly 480 million, 23 million troops and 25 million players. D Alliance is of course dominated by the Gate, with a slightly smaller total number, occupying 24 of the top 100, with about 210 million people, 17 million troops and 16 million players, among which the highest Dusk City ranks 11th. This is a secret agreement, and not many people know about it, but from the clear offensive and defensive forces under the 2 sides, the 2 sides have formed a trend of conflict, and the truth will never be put on the table. The 2 major alliances are in conflict, and more than half of the forces are still not under control, including 2 things. The first is the battle for the lords in the Naxi district of the Pharaoh Empire. Naxi, which is equivalent to a large province, has 2,300 territories and 14 million people. Among the various districts of the Pharaoh Empire, the Naxi district is the richest. Two world-class guilds, Freedom in the United States and Pasha World in India, compete with each other. Although the two sides did not present a wonderful war to the players, they used amazing secret plans to secretly reduce the opponent's favor and reputation in the eyes of NPCs through rumors, suppression, assassination, and other means, so as to achieve the final victory. The reward will include the title of Duke and all taxes of 2,300 territories. As long as either party can get the seat, it will be able to occupy a total of 8,000 territories and gain absolute voice in the player group of Pharaoh Empire. Another thing actually happened with the abdication of the King of Andres, the largest leader of the South Sea Alliance and also the only spokesperson of the state religion. After the king handed over his scepter symbolizing theocracy and the crown of royal power, the world mission Shadow of Death was opened. The triggerer sold himself for the prehistoric boss in the south, but not for his art. As a result, hundreds of thousands of undead troops invaded the South Sea Alliance, and the kings who tolerated the existence of the undead had to pay the price for their original kindness. There are more than 25 million undead in the prehistoric world, and there are 3 million soldiers alone. Of course, the undead are relatively weak, and 3 million troops are only equivalent to 1 million human troops. The network is unstable, and it took more than 3 hours to log in. If you see that I only have one update today, I will definitely make up for it tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Bulletin Lau Bulletin Si Bulletin Me. Chapter 479. The black world was like an endless abyss, with no light and no sound. The purple thunder was fleeting, and there was nothing around, as if it was covered by fog. Slowly, as time passed, pieces of broken earth gathered together, and a towering mountain range was born in the chaotic space, suspended in the void. The top of the mountain spewed out hot magma, flowing through the ground under the feet, gradually cooling and solidifying. The little devils worked together to pull the strips of rock that were hundreds of times their size behind them. Little by little, a castle appeared on the top of the mountain. As solid as a fortress, the iron gates, the rivers flowing with lava, and the arrow towers with tight crossbows seemed to explain something. In the darkness, the first gust of wind appeared, and the dryness was accompanied by rough sand and stones. Standing under the castle, a dozen soul-like ogres touched their faces and suddenly realized how tragic it was to lose their bodies. Alaskan Cod said, "Boss, are we really going to join the darkness?" The New York soldier on the side glanced at him and laughed. "Do you still need to ask? Do you want to report to the god of death?" "That's right, who told us that we are the first batch of players who really died of old age?" Several players around him frowned. The system is really insidious. Just because the initial attributes and growth of the ogre are a little higher, the lifespan of the ogre is reduced to only 20 to 30 years. 20 to 30 years is only 2 years in the game. You have just reached level 100 in the game, but the system tells you that you are old and it is time to go into the coffin. Do you think this group of players in the ogre family will not vomit blood? Moreover, the system did not publish the specific data of the lifespan of the ogre at the beginning. Yes, they are all dead now, in the state of souls. Players who die of old age can either choose to reincarnate as offspring born to NPCs or players in the kingdom, refer to some online games in the past, I haven't learned the details, or their levels and skills are reset to 0. In addition to the inheritance of all wealth and equipment, they can enjoy 150% of the past experience before restoring their original levels. There is another way: transform into a lich, or be transformed into a dead creature by a lich, such as a death knight. The last way, and the most enjoyable way, is to become a warrior of the gods. That is the so-called Holy Spirit or Heroic Spirit. Not only can they retain all the attributes of their life, but they can also get additional attributes and talents. Therefore, for players, this is a very valuable thing. This is Shen Xian's kingdom of God, chaotic and empty, just like the beginning of creation. More than a dozen ogre souls stood there. After a while, Shen Xian's figure slowly appeared. It seemed that thousands of eyes were watching them. Every player felt a sense of being peeped. An extremely dazzling light lit up in the darkness, accompanied by a vast pressure like the sea, descending on the world. In front of them was a man wearing a second-rate rare suit. The style was exaggerated and colorful, absolutely in line with the appearance and momentum of an ultimate boss. Although his appearance could not be seen, the most important thing about being a boss was not his appearance, but his body shape. In the past online games, a boss was hundreds of times the size of the player, which was enough to leave a deep impression on the player's mind from the visual effect. The god in front of them had a body equivalent to that of a giant dragon, and his title was Lord of the Dusk, so it gave people a sense of reality. I didn't expect that the boss's incarnation was so similar, so that he could deceive the gods. The New York soldier thought. You have seen the specific data, get ready for the destruction ceremony. The incarnation's demeanor suddenly changed, without the pressure just now, and the voice of Shen Xian came out. The player knew that the Lord was controlling this character. Becoming a believer of destruction, that is, the guard of the kingdom of God, they will enjoy the following treatment. Level, attributes, skills, equipment, props, and wealth are all retained, lifespan is increased to infinity, reputation, favorability, and loyalty are cleared. Obtain the talent Resistance Skin, Divine Body, Guardian Spirit, and Conqueror. Resistant Skin, Talent, Immunity to 1 to 3 level magic, 4 to 6 level magic effect is halved. Divine Body, Talent, Physical damage is reduced by 15%. Guardian Spirit, Talent, Fighting in the Kingdom of God to gain 10% attribute bonus, leaving the Kingdom of God attribute decreases by 10%. Conqueror, Talent, Exclusive to the Priesthood, Attack power increased by 10%. At the same time, the level of related auxiliary skills is improved, including more than a dozen skills such as Space Studies and Hell Studies. Another point, the level cap is increased to 200. Shen Xian's incarnation swung a sword, which fell directly on the player's head with a chill. Then, the souls that should not be affected by physical attacks rolled down one by one. Then, he stretched out a hand and opened the sealed lead bottle, and countless resentful spirits rushed out. A scarlet magic circle appeared under each player's feet to repair the player's headless body. This is an elite-level task that lasts for 30 minutes. The purpose is to test whether the player's will is enough to become a warrior of the gods. The condition is that the body cannot be moved under painful torture. In the past, it was very simple to accomplish this, but the times are different. With the upgrade of technology, a little bit of uncontrolled behavior in the player's mind may cause a slight wriggling of the limbs, resulting in the failure of the task. Therefore, the test task is actually very challenging. After all, it is a matter of only benefits and no disadvantages. It is better to become an apostle of the player's god. If it is an NPC, there will definitely be a lot of messy obligations, and it will definitely be much easier for players. Of course, such opportunities are rare, because most of the formation of Holy Spirits has several conditions. The first is piety to the gods, which specifically reflects whether the players complete the prayer ceremony every day, whether they often participate in religious discussions, whether they do things that conform to the doctrine, and whether they complete a sufficient number of tasks issued by the church. Players in the House of Ogres meet this condition. The second condition is death, and it cannot be resurrected, just like them, natural death of old age, or NPCs may be killed in war, accidentally poisoned, etc., and only old age death is applicable to players, because players cannot be permanently unable to reborn due to other reasons. Only if these 2 points are met can there be a chance to participate in the test mission. The kingdom has only been in operation for 2 years, and only some short-lived races such as ogres, orcs, and cavemen can die of old age so quickly. As the black energy washes their bodies, the players feel a sense of being filled with power, as if they are really resurrected, and it feels good. Their appearance has changed a lot. Their eyes are red and they are covered in black mist. Their real bodies cannot be seen. This is due to Shen Xian's special identity. If they were in the hands of the gods of light, they would definitely become as holy and solemn as angels. A brand new legion is being born. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Buledin Lao Buledin Si Buledin Me. Chapter 480. The era of great mergers is coming. Every force in the world's top 100 knows that standing still will only lead to death. They either attack their enemies or cooperate with each other secretly. In just 1 week, looking at the Night Star continent, there are only a few forces left. They are the best after the survival of the fittest. Players hope that a vigorous battle of kings can break out among them, but the truth is not as simple as players imagine, and it still takes enough time to brew. Dusk City is naturally unwilling to lag behind. In fact, they are strong enough in the north. Even when the surface forces mention Dusk City, they only get 2 titles, the Tomb of Adventurers and the Gate of the Fallen Temple. It can be imagined that Dusk City has no enemies in the north. What actions will it take as a major force on the comprehensive ranking list? War is inevitable. The result is not that Dusk City's territory continues to expand, but that those countries that are not under the jurisdiction of the Fallen Temple accept Dusk City as their suzerain and depend on Dusk City. Although they retain a large number of troops, the most important thing is that they have an irresistible tribute, which makes Dusk City recognize the identities of these countries. Therefore, the actual control range of Dusk City is as high as 11,000 territories. In these wars, the latest legions formed by various countries with all their strength also shined brightly and gave deterrence to other countries. The first-level professional Mountain Eagle cavalry of the Orc Kingdom is an air unit with a very low threshold. The number of tens of thousands completely dominates the sky of the Orc world, making humans terrified. The Sea Hunters of the Naya Kingdom in the Far East continent are another strategic type of troops. In the absence of sufficient ships, they will have no natural enemies and can easily destroy ships, move freely, and even land operations. They are the overlords of the sea. There are also the Shadow Killers of the Phoenix Council, the Holy Avengers of the Pharaoh Empire, and the Devil May Cry Legion of Nagon. There are thousands of professions in the country, and it is absolutely impossible to eat all the world with one unit, so this is also a great opportunity to understand the trends of all parties. As the game progresses, the wave of large mergers gradually subsides. Less than 50% of the forces on the continent are still controlled by NPCs, and the rest are almost all controlled by players. Unfortunately, there are still very few people who can be deified. There are only a few among millions of people. The conditions for deification are extremely harsh. More importantly, there are very few who can successfully establish a church and persist. Not only will NPCs suppress them, but even players will choose not to let the enemy have an easy time. At present, the situation is gradually easing. Shen Xian, who has been unable to know the remaining 3-point soul center, finally got some inspiration through divination again and again. In the deepest part of hell, a place called Storm Abyss, there used to be a soul center. The dense red clouds will become very thin when they reach Storm Abyss. I don't know if it is the strong gale that whistles all year round, which is enough to make every player who stays here suffer more than 300 points of damage per second. In the 9th level of hell, Storm Abyss is an unowned land. No devil is willing to occupy it. Therefore, most of the time, some uncontrolled wanderers in the wild appear here. All kinds of demons from level 120 to 175 will appear here. Probably because of the bad environment, there is no direct access around, and it is completely suspended in the void, like a fortress, but there is no building inside, except for the stones that are close to each other, which form the shape of a tornado under the twisting wind force. The 120 level lightning dog lurks in the storm. It is very fast, invisible, and has high resistance to magic. It is a complete restraint of the mage. Except for the low life, the 120 level elite lightning dog has only 250,000 health points, which is really a very good unit. The 150 level evil mutant, some of which are similar to elemental creatures, belong to the evil camp. They have a hollow appearance and a strong ability to release dark spells. They often summon hundreds of demons with a wave of their hands. They are small bosses in the storm abyss. A level 175 demon, a thing similar to a devil, is very strong. It's not a big deal that the basic attributes are high. Even the skills can kill a group of people in 1 second. Unfortunately, it has no consciousness, and it is an elite. A level 200 elite still can't beat a level 150 hero. This is lucky. Now, Shen Xian has a good impression among various devil lords. The initial impression of strangers is above 50, and some are almost 70. Compared with other races, it can really be said to be very fast. He once asked the nearby lords to know the history of Storm Abyss, but few lords can say it, unless they ask the master. It took a lot of effort to get here. It was a bit dangerous for him to walk in hell alone. He joined the New York soldiers, several highest level players in the Ogre House, and the highest level players in the evil camp in Dusk City. A total of 5 people formed a team and finally came here. It is impossible to imagine the spectacular scene in front of you. The light completely disappeared here, and all kinds of bright stars were eclipsed. It's like a black hole in the universe, giving people endless reverie space. Not only that, going deep into the depths of the storm abyss, you can actually see the most primitive rock pillars built by the devils. The style above has a sense of barbarity, depicting battles and history since ancient times. Each pillar has a history of more than 10,000 years, hundreds of times higher than them, and you can't see the end at a glance. What the hell is this place? I can't seem to recognize the meaning of the patterns on the pillars. Is it because my level of Hello Logi is not enough? Let's take a quick video. Maybe we won't have a chance to come in again. The players talked to each other. It was rare for this group of high-level players to come out for sightseeing in groups. They seemed very curious. Although there was no sense of danger around them, it was as if they had entered the eye of the storm and became a safe haven. However, their professional qualities still kept them alert at all times. In the darkness of unknown depth and breadth in the distance, a terrifying sound suddenly came out, as if a tsunami had hit. The positive movement speed, moving in the direction of the skill center release point, of each player was reduced by 80%, and the negative movement speed was increased by 100%. This was not what surprised them. What surprised them was that in a distant place, they could actually see an extremely huge tail, like a giant whale turning over in the ocean. It seemed to be closer to a snake-like creature with a scale structure. They could estimate the size of the tail. Whether it was as big as a city or small, they could not get exact data. Maybe it was the size of a country. Then, how big would the total size of the creature be? It felt like looking down at a country from space. What the hell was it? The player tried to query the information of the NPCs passing by, and got a vague answer: name, HP, mana. Even the name was unknown. They didn't know where the soul center was. When they wanted to start exploring, a vague figure appeared in front of them. A master.